Hello and welcome to this episode of Leadership Guest Practices. Empathy, leadership, EQ and the human touch have come front and centre through the pandemic and highlight the importance of our people at all levels in all roles. So what do businesses need to do to unlock a more human-centred approach at leadership level and across the wider organisation? What benefits does the organisation and its people gain from unlocking humanity internally, and how it works with stakeholders, customers, partners and communities? Enter my guest Samie Al-Achrafi, who is recognised as one of the world's leading voices on values and culture change, and has collected an impressive range of awards and plaudits, including Most Visionary Business Transformation CEO, Game Changer of the Year, and Most Influential CEO of the Year. Samie strongly believes that we need to put humanity back at the heart of our businesses and the way leaders lead organisations everywhere. In fact, he founded his business Marmalade Fish to do exactly this, focused on the all-important how-to. And this work, on stages and in corporate classrooms, is supplemented by his fabulous book on the topic, #Time for Humanity. So let's hear more about it from Samie himself in his own words. Hello and welcome to this episode of Leadership Guest Practices. Joining me today is Samie Al-Achrafi of Marmalade Fish. Samie, thanks for joining me. Please introduce yourself, your journey in business, and of course your wonderful book, #Time for Humanity.
Absolutely. Hi, Jeremy, and to all of your listeners. Well, as you say, I'm Samie Al-Achrafi. I'm half Arabic, half Syrian, half British. I was born and raised in the UAE, studied in the UK, US, and I've lived and worked literally all around the world. Professionally speaking, I started my career at Walt Disney World in Orlando, and then bizarrely moved on to the diplomatic service. I've worked in aviation, manufacturing, banking, but the red thread of everything that I've done has always been values, ethics, and culture. So in 2015, that evolved into setting up Marmalade Fish, which is a leadership and management consultancy with a purpose to bring humanity back to business. And if we fast track a few years from then, I saw the impact that we'd had in the services sector. And so I wanted to be involved as well in consumer products and became a partner in ELEPHAS Paris, which is the first beauty brand in the world dedicated to the conservation of an endangered species, and the purpose there being nature and humanity thriving together. So in essence, I took the 20 years of experience I've had working across sectors, industries, geographies, and started to answer the question, what could leadership look like in business in the third decade of this century? And what are the perceptions around key environmental and social topics that might inform how we think about business as a force for good? And that's how Time for Humanity was born.
Wow, there's a couple of things actually. Just one quick question of follow-up though. First of all, Marmalade Fish. Please explain the name.
I was traveling to Japan many years ago, and the koi fish is hugely symbolic in that culture. And so I was looking at this group of koi fish and I thought, wow, they're so beautiful. But when I kept looking, I noticed that my perception was stagnation. It was like every fish for itself. And so I started to reflect, how many systems have I belonged to that look beautiful from the outside, but have stagnation on the inside? And as I had that insight, this one koi fish broke away from the school. She started to swim upstream and others followed her. And I thought, wow, it only takes one. And in that moment, the tour guide said, her name is Marmalade. So Marmalade Fish inspired this breakaway of it only takes one to break out of the status quo and to create something more vibrant, more energetic or meaningful.
What a wonderful story. And I would never have guessed that, actually.
One of the top Google searches is, what is a marmalade fish?
And the koi where you were standing by would come up, no doubt. And you know what you articulate in that moment is your point about nature and humanity thriving together, and thinking about that, and and how it's given rise to your book, Time for Humanity. I think it's been a fascinating journey. And in that book, the heart of it, which I've now read, which I absolutely loved, is the search to unlock that humanity across more businesses, whether they're large or small, and everywhere around the world, of course. So why is it so important now, do you think? And how did we lose it in the first place?
Well, great question. Well, I think as individuals, we moved away from that sense of the importance of community. And so what we've seen is over the last decades, we notice business making more decisions in isolation. And for the most part, Jeremy, actually, they were getting away with it. And our individual responsibility, I think, is we must notice we were allured by money and this incomplete notion of success. For me, it's like the glass towers of a headquarter building symbolized something wonderful, like an erection of hopes and dreams. And yet the research, as you know, tells us the employee experience inside those glass towers was far from dreamlike. So I don't think it was ever going to be sustainable in the long term to put profit before principle all the time, value before values constantly. And having values and principles is what it means to be human. It's innate in humanity. So what that means as we look back, what's brought us to this point, is that we have been colluding and suppressing fundamental parts of ourselves, or at worst, actually denying parts of what it means to be human. It's like we hired people at these fancy career fairs and we enticed them to bring their genius into the system, but then we shoehorned them into a command and control hierarchical structure, expected to fit in and toe the line. The number of times I've perceived systems like, I will ask for your opinion when I give it to you. And I don't call that management, I call that damagement. And we ponder why this productivity gap is so big. Well, some studies have shown it is standard, try and get your head around this, standard for some employees in corporates to spend up to 50% of their week managing internal politics. With a 5-day week, that's 2.5 days a week. And there's no restructure that's going to fix that. There's no leadership or training program that's going to be the silver bullet to fixing that. And I think over the last couple of years, we've been reminded what people actually feel is wonderful, as in full of wonder. It's a sense of community and belonging, a company that does more good than harm, where people can show up with their genius, their uniqueness, express more of themselves and their unique character traits and be valued for it. And this illusion that life is about pursuing marks, targets, numbers, money above all else, I think has now broken down.
So management, not damagement.
Exactly.
Principles before profit, values before value. And you're right, probably there's been a timing issue. There's probably the way we've done business for decades and what we've been driven by has been very, very different, actually, which has kind of suppressed some of this. But you're right, where we've got to and where that leads us to in many businesses like politics and, like I say, almost, over 100 days a year lost through just kind of internal management and all of this nonsense. We've sort of lost ourselves a little bit. In many other ways and views on business transformation over the decade ahead, but particularly over the last 18 months through the pandemic, there's been kind of an accelerator of some. And I'm interested to explore this just a little bit further within your book, Time for Humanity again, because you discuss an unconscious past, which I'm starting to hear as you're talking, and a new awakening that more enlightened leaders and executives are embracing. So maybe if you could help explain that journey a little bit more depth to where we are now, and particular significance for where we're going in the decade or 2 decades ahead.
I think 10 or 15 years ago, values were perceived to be just fluffy things and culture has widely been misunderstood. And then business awoke to the importance of values, but it's kind of level one. So at the moment, we're seeing empty value statements, and that actually creates more cynical and dispirited employees, that alienates customers, and it undermines managerial credibility. Jeremy, my LinkedIn feed is flooded with messages of justice, equity, celebrating a myriad of World Day of. But I think people are sensing a real authenticity and a sense of meaning. How does the passion and commitment for leaders and business translate beyond a post or a hashtag? And I've been seeing chief heart officers of well-known brands speaking at global events. And when I check the employee reviews on Glassdoor, it really makes for sobering reading to see how the values are lived and the culture actually plays out in those organizations. So I've noticed now we're starting to hear about the great resignation or the great attrition. And I'm imagining a world not too far away from now where employers actually have star ratings. And I'm wondering, Jeremy, would you work for a company with a 2 or 3 star rating? I think we've perhaps forgotten how much power we have as employees and consumers, and the opportunity we have every day to vote and shape for the world we want. And in that regard, I think what's coming is interviews, for example, are going to become far more two-way. I'm imagining the person being interviewed asking, what do you actually stand for? Or which of the SDG sub-goals are you currently focused on? Or what does your culture look like or feel like when it's at its best or not at its best? And that's going to require us to become more conscious.
Yes, I couldn't agree more. And it echoes research that I've done myself in this more enlightened age. And within that, we talk about the new power, the switch of power from employer to employee, making the choice of either staying if they're in the organization at the moment, or making different choices of why they're joining or why they would want to join another business moving forward. I mean, particularly asking questions like, what's your record on sustainability, on community? How did you treat your employees during the pandemic? All of these things. What are your leadership like? Are they humans? Are they automatons? And do they empower us to do something new? Because I might not be looking for a career with you. I might be looking for 2 or 3 key years with you, but it's got to be a right fit for both of us now. So I really get that. Right? Go ahead.
I totally agree. I was just going to say, and then the challenge level 2, if we like, is to adopt culture change. But the problem there is, again, it's not a tick box exercise. It's like the difference between doing agile and being agile. So you can implement a change management process and you can embrace maybe the rational part of it. But if you really want to have a culture of feedback, innovation, flexibility, collaboration, in other words, all of those human elements, then it's going to require connecting with people at the deepest level of their feelings, emotions, and thinking. And something you just said made me reflect on younger generations entering leadership positions now. They're pursuing careers that will not necessarily take them down the path of money and power. Gen Z or Z want to walk the walk and talk the talk. And there's this discernible shift that's happening now towards these values of self-expression, collective creativity, inclusiveness, and as I said before, authenticity. So I think the generations that are coming into the pipeline of leadership are going to explore these new solutions. And it's our job to stay relevant. But what's become clear is doing good and making money are not mutually exclusive concepts. And it's my contention that in the future, if you want to do well, you're going to have to do good.
I couldn't agree more. And something you said right at the beginning about leaders, businesses, people being forces for good. It's how we start to look beyond our business walls and into the big society issues that we're all responsible for. And I suspect that as a summary of what we've talked about there, that there's a lot of lip service paid here. I mean, that old statement, culture eats strategy for breakfast, from Peter Drucker. Particularly we've been focused on the what, but it sounds like from what you're saying, the question is being shifted now on what we need to do or the culture that we need to how we actually do it and how we execute it. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. And in that sense, I think the question for leaders is not what can we do now, but who do we need to be in order to create that shift? And the book is, as you know, an exploration. It outlines the characteristics of conscious leadership, but the book is not for people who are looking for another leadership model. I suggest there's no framework for being human. And the invitation is Do we want to start to go inside, examine our own humanity, and start asking the big and important questions of our time, perhaps holding perspectives a little bit lighter? So having that sacred relationship between reader and the book, and just the space to be able to reflect on what's no longer serving us, what has served us to bring us to this point. How can we vote, as I say, every single day through ethical consumerism or our relationship with nature, before the end of the book, part 3, which is really turning the lens, uncomfortably perhaps, onto ourselves and doing some shadow work on our egos.
And I found I found the whole book fascinating. And as you know, I read it in pretty short order. It is a book for now. And for those of you listening or watching, we'll have the links for it at the end of this, and also on the introduction, as you may have heard already. And I would like to go almost deeper there, because there is actually, that we're calling for change, calling for action. However, there is a notable rise of leaders like you and businesses like Marmalade Fish buying into a more ethical, human-centered, compassionate way of running our businesses, but also leading our businesses, which balances, I think, more than just purpose, people, and profit, but brings in those things that you were talking about before, underpinning it with real values, living day by day by the principles that we talk about. It is walking the talk, as you say, and something you've done, I know, in Marmalade Fish, because you're a certified B Corp. Is that correct?
It is. Back in 2016, we became the first and only certified B Corporation in the GCC region. And if we look in the Middle East, except Danone in Egypt, we continue to be the only certified B Corp. So come and join us in this part of the world, which needs so much help. But yeah, it's been a wonderful journey, because the first time we did the impact assessment, and I would recommend to any leader in business, whether you hold the intention to become a B Corp or not, to do it. It really gave me a sense of, whilst we might be considered ahead of a curve in some respects, we really are a base camp when you look at all the opportunities for us to improve.
And Samie, if you don't mind, just a quick diversion for many listening or watching this, they may not know fundamentally what a certified B Corp is. Could you just give us a quick summary, please?
Absolutely. So certified B Corps, there's about 3,500-4,000 around the world. And it is a certification, a verified way of saying that we believe that business is a force for good, and that there is a form of conscious leadership that will be able to tackle some of the most pressing and important aspects of our time. So you go through an assessment to look at governance, community, environment, workers. And in each of these buckets, if you like, for want of a better term, you get a score through the impact assessment, which is verified. I can't tell you the number of hundreds of documents which are required. And I think that real authenticity, I think it's sad I have to add real before authentic these days, but the real authenticity of people looking for companies that actually do good. When you are a certified B Corp, you can trust that it has been verified. And I will use the word robust. It's a robust process, believe me. You go through recertification every 3 years, which means that next year we will go through our recertification. And you get points for different things. For example, at Marmalade Fish, we're committed to giving 5% of our revenue, not profit, to charitable causes every year. And because we're a relatively small organization, headquartered here in Dubai, but with offices in London and Hong Kong, it allows us to go where the help is needed. At the moment, that seems to be helping the Lebanon, but previously it was helping Amazon or Madagascar, Burkina Faso, Vietnam, and the kind donation that you made as well to Animals Asia. We're so grateful to support.
Yes, it's one of the benefits of the age that we live in, is that we can help anywhere, anytime, and be driven by that. And I'm interested to get to the brass tacks then now, because you and your business and many others of the thousands that you said, which is not many in the grand scheme of things, who are certified B Corps, are walking the talk. So for those who are tuning in here, saying, right, okay, I'm buying into this, I'm getting it, I'm seeing the demand for it in my own business. What are the benefits of this more compassionate, society-minded, empathetic, if you like, brand of leadership? sense of being in some ways in our businesses today. When, if you like, juxtaposed to that, some traditional leaders at the moment maybe are focused, particularly through the pandemic, on business survival, jumping to the tune of shareholders versus stakeholders, and enjoying the current brand of capitalism, for want of a better word. If you're reimagining what business and what leadership could be look like, what are these benefits for 20th century modern business leaders?
Wow. So that is the power question. Well, I think the platform for change has been given through the pandemic. And the case for change is that what we have been doing the last few decades without judgment is no longer serving us. There is an awakening to operating skills, technical understanding, and financial knowledge will only get us so far. And so if we want to thrive in the 21st century, my sense is that we need to enable people with the skills, the values, the character to lead effectively through the complexities of this era. Because any strategy offsite that happens from typically October through to March or April next year is not going to be able to predict what's happening in the world. However, if we go back, we peel off the layers to our humanity and we reconnect with purpose and values and character, then there is more chance that we're going to be successful and thrive. In its simplest form, conscious leadership refers to the ability to bring one's full self to a position. And we said earlier, there's a sense that people have been somehow suppressed, so we're not tapping into the potentiality. Conscious leaders don't focus just on themselves, but they look at the system as a whole, that share to stakeholder mentality that you spoke about, or indeed the 3 Ps. So the 21st century reality is that the ultimate business impact is to have employees who bring all their energy, intellect, passion, creativity, and desire to participate in an organization, which might not be for more than 3, 4, 5 years as we move from hierarchy to networks, but to bring it for a period of time. And if we can't change the hierarchy, then the main leverage that we have is the quality of our relationships with stakeholders. And what I suggest is how we show up as leaders, how we listen and connect and give and receive support, how we care for people. These are skills as much as commitments. And they can't be taught at a leadership or training event once a year and revisited months later just through a 360-degree exercise. It needs more. So my sense is humanity sits above, or it could even underpin, this more ethical, human-centered, values-driven approach. And it requires more empathy. And what is empathy? The ability to emotionally understand what people feel, to see things from their point of view, and to imagine yourself in their place. Well, how powerful is that? And what's compassion? Well, compassion motivates people to go out of their way to help themselves and other people. And if business exists to solve problems for other people, then actively solving those is a form of compassion. And that's why I think as leaders and agents of change, the opportunity is for us to deepen our understanding of these words we use, be flexible in our style and approach, and say, what has brought us here is wonderful, and maybe there's an opportunity to make small shifts in how we show up moving forward.
Beautifully put, Samie. And I love the bit towards the end there where you talk about humanity as the strong foundation, but also the protective roof in many ways of the organizations of tomorrow, today, if that makes sense. And how that in itself, we're tapping into, our more conscious selves, our deeper selves, the human-centered selves, of which there's a lot being talked about now, to engage, motivate, mobilize others in that whole journey, which combines all those things. Yes, we're in business to make money, but we're also there to make a difference for communities, the internal community, external community, We have society and planet-minded challenges that we all need to be involved with. And if business get behind that and business leaders tune into this as you're talking about, then we're going to make some progress. So thank you very much for that very detailed answer on that one. And I guess my final question for you is that for those who have been really interested to hear what you've had to say and they want to go further in this and indeed are passionate about moving forward and ready to bring a deeper humanity back to their own businesses. I know it's not an easy journey, and this is a tough question, but what would be your kind of top 3 tips, at least, to accelerate progress, and of course bring people along with them as they go?
Well, the most humble thing that we can do is work on ourselves. So I hear the cool kids say, "You do you," and my central message is just 6 words: be you, do you, for you. So I guess that's step 1. Step 2, I invite leaders to become really clear on what their core values are. If you're able to say 2, 3, maximum 4 core values and then work out for yourself, what do they look like? How do they translate behaviorally? What does it look like on a day that you choose to intentionally role model your values? And just by putting language around them, I found is helpful. And then don't wait to get feedback. Don't wait for the system to organize a 360 or the performance management conversations. Conscious leaders are the ones who lean in and ask for feedback. So step 1, you do you. Step 2, what are your values and what do they look like when you are role modeling them behaviorally? And then my 3rd tip would be, we've had a lifetime of giving opinions. And I wonder what it would look like if we dialed that down by 5 or 10%. Conscious leadership is about being curious, going beyond the state of expert and moving into explorer. So what does it look like once a day to adopt a more inquiry-based approach to things? Asking questions like we do at Marmalade Fish. What do you think? What are we not seeing? What is the value in an opposing perspective? Let's reflect, or as we say, let's marinate. When does that decision need to be made by? And I think if we're able to pull a little bit more than our tendency to push, you will find that you give space for people to show up, to engage with, and then connect, express their humanity. You give a freedom within the frame for people to show up and bring some of the things that we've been talking about, your podcast, to life.
So that expression of humanity at all levels, in fact.
Absolutely.
And those 3 things, the first one resonated: be you, do you, for you. Love it. And those core values to behaviors, that is what you were talking about before, which is walking the talk, not just talking the talk, as is so often the case. But that is probably a big part of your 3rd element, which is a more conscious approach to individual leadership, company leadership, people leadership, to explore, inquire, not just wait for feedback, as you were saying, but, open up those conversations. I'm absolutely sure through such a thought-provoking vodcast that many people tuning in will want to get in touch, Samie. And I have to thank you from the bottom of my heart for a journey that we've not taken before in these vodcasts, a much deeper journey, which I think is needed right now. And I know many people will want to carry on that conversation. So how do they find out more about you, about Marmalade Fish, and how do they get hold of the book? And we'll make sure that we put this at the bottom of the screen as well.
Well, thank you for your words and the opportunity, Jeremy. I've loved it. My personal website is samieal-achrafi.com. Quite hard to spell, but the company website is marmaladefish.com. The book is available at all major retailers. It's in paperback, it's ebook, and also audiobook. And lastly, my handle on social media is just at Samie Al-Achrafi.
Well, Samie Al-Achrafi, thank you very much for joining me. That has been, as I said, thought-provoking, fascinating, and food for thought for many traditional and new leaders alike. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jeremy.
Thank you for joining our Guest Practices videocast. Please do subscribe to our YouTube channel through the link below, or check out our website to access more in our current series of expert interviews.